to.
All right, well, good morning. This is Rotem 101, Basics of Interpretation. So the focus and the purpose of this presentation is to give you guys an overview of Rotem and give you a strategy for interpreting the results. So we're going to go through the temogram shape, the parameters, and the assays, and then go through some examples. So obviously, disclaimer is I'm not a doctor, and Rotem should not be the sole basis for your diagnosis or replacement of any textbook education. So what is Rotem? Rotem is actually a play on the word rotational thromboelastometry, and it is a more generally viscoelastic testing. So this idea of viscoelastic testing blood has been around since the 40s. You guys may be familiar with the competitor, which is TAG. Rotem's only been approved in the United States since 2012, but it does dominate the market worldwide. So there's over 1,500 papers where Rotem is in the title or abstract. So there's a lot of evidence to support its use. So really what Rotem is doing is using a whole blood sample. It's looking at the way the platelets, the red blood cells, the coagulation factors all work together to form a clot, how stable that clot is, and then any kind of premature breakdown of the clot. So in general, we say it's more or less a global assessment of coagulation. A little more specifically, it's a global assessment of the classic secondary hemostasis. So when you consider an injury and you have an initial platelet plug form, that's considered primary hemostasis, and it triggers the classic intrinsic-extrinsic coagulation cascade and those factors. And those factors work to generate thrombin. So anytime you give an FFP or protamine to reverse the effects of heparin, you're really affecting that generation of thrombin. Once thrombin is generated, it cleaves fibrinogen into fibrin. That fibrin is really what gives that platelet plug its strength, reinforces it, and so anytime you give cryoprecipitate or the antifibrinolytics, you're affecting the strength of the clot. And I point this out because it does come into play later on when you're looking at the results in kind of a more broad view. So when you look at Rotem compared to your classic PT, APTT, ACT tests, these tests tend to stop when a clot's initiated. So essentially they're saying they can form a clot, but you don't know how strong that clot is, and you don't know how long, if that clot's sticking around long enough to be effective. So this is where Rotem comes into play in terms of giving you that entire picture. So this is the device itself. I believe you guys will have one device in the lab. It'll be, once the sample gets to the lab, so you guys will be walking the sample to the lab. It's touchscreen, step by step. It is an automated pipette, so it really should only take the tech a couple of minutes to get everything up and running. There's 4 testing channels because we have the 5 assays that are designed to be used in combination. So really it's, at the very least, they're always going to be running at least 2 channels. Within each channel is the cup and pin. So cup is stable and the pin moves. As blood coagulates, movement of the pin's impeded, and that's what we're analyzing. So you can think the thicker the clot, the less movement of the pin.
How quickly, Angie, does the blood sample need to get to the lab?
Yeah. So the sample goes in a blue top citrated tube. So the citrate anticoagulates. It's good up to 4 hours. However, your patient's bleeding, so ASAP, right? Yeah. But it is good for up to 4 hours. And each channel takes 300 microliters, so that one blue top is more than enough to run each channel multiple times. If something goes wonky in channel 1,
So even half a tube would be enough.
Yeah. You do need to fill it to that blue line to make sure the concentration of citrate's correct. Like that's the tube manufacturer's recommendation. That's what our reagents are based off of. But
Is that 3 mils? Then the blue?
Yeah, it's a 2.7 or the 1.8. I think there's a 1.8, but it's really just about filling it properly so you get that correct concentration of citrate. But really, like I said, the extra. If something goes wrong in channel 1, they can stop channel 1 and restart it. It's not like they need additional sample from the patient. So like I said, there's 4 channels, but there are 5 assays. They're designed to be used in combination, and we have 2 base assays. And the names really reflect the intrinsic or extrinsic pathways. So we're using activators, ellagic acid for the intrinsic pathway, activator tissue factor for the extrinsic pathway. Intem's going to be most sensitive to heparin because there's nothing in there to neutralize heparin. Everything else has something in it to neutralize heparin. So the assay designed to be used in combination with Intem is Heptem. So Heptem has ellagic acid as activator and heparinase to neutralize up to 7 units. Intem to Heptem, that assay combination really was more or less designed for cardiac, for use in cardiac situations. The other two assays are the Aptem, which has an antifibrinolytic in it, and I always say this is a what if. So what if you gave TXA or Amicar, what might the clot look like? Really more or less useful in really making that confirmation it's truly a hyperfibrinolysis. FibTem is a go-to bread and butter assay. FibTem's gonna let you rule in, rule out fibrin, because what they're doing is we're taking out the platelet contribution. We're using cytoplasm D, which acts on the platelet skeleton, and essentially removes that. So when you think about the clot, what's actually forming the clot, you have the platelets and the fibrin. You take the platelets out, you can rule in, rule out the fibrin. So Xtem to FibTem is really gonna be a go-to assay with most every bleeding patient. So here at Advocate, you guys have, they've already considered some of the typical clinical situations and created order set codes. So if you're in cardiac and you're doing a baseline, you would go to the appropriate screen, type in ROT-CBL, and that would put in the order for cardiac baseline for Rotem, and the lab would know which assays to run. So these are in there, and then if you wanted to order individual assays, the order code would just be the name of the assay.
Is there anything different for the obstetric population?
So with obstetrics, that is technically off-label. There's a lot of clinical data out there for that, and we can talk a little bit outside the recording about that if you want.
Hopefully. You can do whatever you want, but it's not indicated, right?
Right, well, you guys have the device, you can use it however
Do
you
whatever
want,
you want, but you
label,
can't say.
off-label's really only relevant for the company promoting the device.
Perfect.
So again, you'll go in, put in your, order set code. You guys won't be tubing, some of the accounts are tubing. And then you're gonna bring up Rotem Live. So the whole idea being you guys are able to make decisions as the test is running, because right now I believe that they're set to run for anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. So you don't wanna be waiting that long for results. So there's a web address right here. Rotem Live is web-based. So you'll put that in. Hopefully, you guys will save it on your computers, so that way you're not putting in the actual web address. And then you'll get to screens that look like this. And for right now, I know they're having some technical difficulties. The login is advocate01 and the password is advocate02. Eventually, this will be a personalized login, but like I said, they're just having some technical difficulties with that database right now. And then you're gonna put in the MRN number, and you're gonna see every channel that's running with that MRN number. And the screen will look like this essentially. So, like I said, you'll be able to watch it as it's developing. You will have an option for a drop down. There's here to, it'll say patient overlay or profile overlay. Profile overlay will highlight what the reference range is, so it'll give you like a dotted black line to show you the reference range. And patient overlay will show you the last four for that MRN number and the last 24 hours. So it'll allow you to do a little bit of timing for that patient. Any questions about that? So now you guys know how to order, got a little overview of the device. I want to give you a strategy for looking at the results because there is a lot going on. So we'll break it down. First thing we'll talk about is the shape forming or the temogram. This is everything, the thing most everyone pays attention to. And really all that is the movement of the pin converted to millimeters of amplitude over time in minutes. And it is an inverse relationship. So the less the pin moves, the greater the amplitude. There's reference, at 40 millimeters of amplitude, there's a dotted green line that's as a reference point, and that's really more or less derived from the literature out there. 0 to 2 millimeters, it's gonna turn green. 2 to 20, it'll turn purple, and then anything over 20, it's gonna turn blue. So this is just for ease of visualization, so you can be across the room, you can say blue's overlapping the dotted green line, so it looks like we have a nice strong clot. You can also use the shape, so I'm sure you guys have heard these shape analogies. My favorite is bullets and wine glasses. So you see the firm and stable clot looks like a wine glass. The blue's overlapping that dotted green line. I call it a wine glass because I say this is a clot worth cheersing to, or a clot that gets you home to a glass of wine much sooner. Versus the bullet shape, so a little bit lower amplitude with that blue in between the dotted green lines. Looks like a bullet shape, so much like a bullet, not as good for a bullet to the patient. This clot's not as good for the patient. And then the unstable looks like a little bit like a fish. So clots forming and then being broken down before it can be effective, or the pins, not getting much movement and then getting more movement. You guys will be watching the results as they're developing, so the full-blown, you may not have the benefit of the full-blown shape, so you're gonna wanna be able to know what the numeric parameters mean. There are reference ranges for some of them, but obviously keep in mind, like a lot of the other lab tests, the reference ranges are gonna be based off of a healthy, non-bleeding population. So once the test starts running, the first parameter that generates is the clot time. And the clot time really reflects the activator being used and those intrinsic or extrinsic pathway factors. So an extension of the clot time is gonna essentially mean there's something going on above the generation of thrombin, right? There's a factor deficiency, there's some heparin on board, things of that nature. Clot formation time is just the time it takes to go from 2 to 20 millimeters of amplitude. In terms of basic interpretation, it's really more of a focus on the clot time. The next parameter that generates is your A10. So you have your CT, then your CFT, and then your A10 generates. And your A10 is amplitude 10 minutes after your CT time. So if your CT time's 120 seconds, your A10 generates at 12 minutes of runtime, and your A10 will have a strong correlation to your maximum clot firmness. So these two parameters are essentially telling you how strong is that clot. Can I rule in, rule out fibrin? And then the last parameters have to do with how stable that clot is. So you have your maximum lysis, which is percentage of clot degraded at any given point in time. So if a couple minutes into the run, the clot starts degrading, you're gonna start seeing a percentage show up in that field. Whereas your lysis index 30 is 30 minutes after your CT time. So clearly a static point in time. If the clot starts breaking down, and this is the only parameter you're really looking at, you might see that in the shape, but you're not gonna see a number generated here until 30 minutes after CT time. So this is really essentially all the parameters, but when it comes to basics of interpretation, you're really focusing on your clot time. So is there something blocking that generation of thrombin in the intrinsic or extrinsic pathway? Your A10, or maximum clot firmness, how strong is that clot? Do we need fibrin? Do we need platelets? And then your ML, so how stable is that clot? Is there hyperfibrinolysis, and would they benefit from a TXA or an amyloid? And then we have the assays. So like I said, they're designed to work in combinations. So there's 5 assays for 3 combinations. The first combination is INTEM to HepTem. So INTEM, intrinsic pathway, nothing in there to neutralize heparin. So we're thinking about that CT time, being a little extended at 350 seconds. We want to rule in or rule out heparin, so we're going to HepTem, which has heparinase in it. And you can see the CT time is decreased, so that heparinase has taken the effects of heparin out of the equation, shorten that CT time, and that would allow you to confirm that there is definitely a need for protein. So INTEM to HepTem, you're really looking at the ratio between the CT times. The next combination, XTEM to FibTem. This is the bread and butter combination. It's gonna let you rule in, rule out fibrin. So we clearly have a bullet shape in our XTEM, so it's a weak clot, so we know we're looking, see that bullet shape, we're looking to our A10. See it's 27, so fibrin, platelets, go to your FibTem, that is that pure fibrin clot. You see your A10's 4, typically double digits for the amplitude in FibTem, so 4 would be low. You'd be able to say there's definitely a need for fibrin.
So, usually 10 minutes is the time that you will get most of your data.
Yes, yes.
You're not gonna wait, 30 minutes or
No.
60 minutes on, experiencing your patients. But
Right.
within 10 minutes, you should be able to get all the data.
Right, and that A10 is that first numeric parameter that, will give you an indication of how strong the clot is. Now, I have video examples where you can see if the clot's forming, you can clearly see maybe we're already headed towards a bullet shape. So just by looking at the shape developing, you may be able to make that determination, but A10 is your first numeric parameter.
You'd get an idea of the clot in like the first couple minutes, even because you see like the shape and how it's gonna go, and you can already sort of see if the clot's gonna be strong or not.
Like I said, I have some videos and, where you'll be able to see that.
You have to wait to figure out the stability of the clock.
Right, and that's always kind of the kicker, because you're gonna have to look at the whole of the clinical situation, right? Like if it's a cardiac situation where maybe they're already treating with TXA or Amicar, that might be, really at the bottom of the list in terms of cause of bleeding. So then, in that situation, they may go, well, our A10 came back, and make their decision and kind of turn away from the Rotem at that point. The test will run for, I believe most of them have it set to run for 60 minutes. That doesn't necessarily mean you guys are staring at it for 60 minutes, right? You're gonna stare at it until you make your decision and then move on, so.
There's an algorithmic pathway, right?
Yes, so there are algorithms being developed, and I know like Dr. Doherty was putting one together for trauma, and then Dr. Irani, pathologist at St. Luke's, was working to put some together for cardiac. I know where they are, they're pretty close to being finalized, they just weren't finalized, so I didn't know if.
So
But
we'll
they
have
are.
that too, right?
Yes, yeah,
In the near future, so
yeah,
that. you-
very soon, yeah,
Your CT time is this,
get this.
do ABC, follow the
Yeah,
algorithm.
yeah. Yeah, like I said, this is really intended just to be a really good introduction to Rotem, not to make you guys
If
experts.
they roll it out next week, people are gonna try to use it, and they're like, what do I do with a CT of 310?
Right.
And then I gotta call Garibashvili, say, well, I got a bullet for him, is it good, is it bad?
No, it's bad. Bullet is bad.
Bullet's back.
You want the
Bullet's
wine
bad.
glass.
You want the wine, okay.
You want the wine glass, yeah.
Very good. Bullet's bad.
So yeah, this is just highlighting again that fifth time comes back at 10, then you can say fibrin might be okay and move on to platelets. Yeah, a lot of what I'm walking you through is actually on the back of that card.
The
so.
fish is
Yeah, you don't want a fish.
You don't want the fish.
No fish.
It's instability.
Good, so there you go, done.
Okay.
It is, it's really, it's free decision. Yeah, this is highlighting that fish shape, clearly fish shape in the X10, the Aptem that has the antifibrinolytic in it, wine glass shape, so it's an overactivity of plasmin, and they're using the ML parameters. So 20 minutes into the run, you would have seen a 4% here, so 4% of the clot's gone. 3 minutes later, 30% of the clot's gone, so you would have had, absolute numeric confirmation this clot is unstable. And that concurrently, the Aptem is running, and you see at 23 minutes that there's no ML. Again, like I said, this is confirmation of that.
What do those terms stand for? External aptitude?
So that, they're the name of the
It's on the
assays.
card.
Yeah, they're the name of the assays. So XTEM, is extrinsic pathway. They're using tissue factor to activate the extrinsic pathway. Aptem, it is apronin in there, or as someone else said, antiplasmin. So, to give that what F.
So when you send in blood, do you have to specify?
No, so those order set codes I went through, like I said, it's really just a matter of picking, your clinical situation. We can go back to those at the end if you have more questions, but, yeah, so they already thought through which assays are gonna be most relevant in some of the clinical situations. However, I would say in any situation the patient's bleeding, X10 to 510 is gonna be your safest, it's gonna give you the bulk of your information. So here we have X10, and you can see, shape is tapering in a little bit, and you can confirm that it is tapering in. You look at your ML, it's 23%. So is this a low grade, late stage lysis? You wanna make that confirmation, but you only have the FibTem running. If you look at your FibTem and the MLs, there's no lysis in FibTem, there's no ML in FibTem, it's not true lysis. So from a physiology standpoint, plasmin only degrades fibrin. Hyperfibrinolysis is overactivity of that plasmin. So if it's not degrading in the FibTem cup, it's not an overactivity of plasmin. what's happening is in the XTEM cup, the platelets are reorganizing the meshwork, and the pin's getting more movement, so it looks like a hyperfibrinolysis, but it's, in the patient, it's just clot retraction. So you can see that on the back of the card where they're highlighting, the fact that you would need a fish shape in FibTem and XTEM or InTem to really, confirm lysis. So how everything comes together, and again, this is essentially the basis for the algorithms, that are being designed, is if your patient's bleeding, obviously you're gonna look for surgical issues and basic conditions that affect hemostasis, like temperature, calcium, pH, hemoglobin. If you suspect lysis, that's really looking at your XTEM to your APTEM and your FibTem with that ML parameter, or the LA30 parameter. If you suspect heparin's a cause of bleeding, you're looking at your InTem to your HepTem with that CT ratio between the two. And if you're looking, really with every patient that's bleeding, XTEM to FibTem to rule in, rule out fibrin, because you wanna make sure they can build a wine glass or I call it the Hoover Dam of clots, to stop the flow. And then once, you rule in, rule out that need for fibrin, then you can kind of start getting into what I say more the nitty-gritty, comparing the CTs and your InTem to your XTEM to make that decision about PCCs or FFP or, some of the more, expensive, factor concentrates and things like that. So, to review the strategy, you're gonna wanna keep in mind that your patient's bleeding, so treating to the low end of that reference range may not be enough. You're gonna wanna look at the shape, so bullets are bad, wine glasses are good. Remember, the bigger the amplitude, the firmer the clot. Keep in mind the three parameters, so your ML for clot stability, your A10 for how strong that clot is, and then your CT for thrombin generation. Can I rule in, rule out heparin, or more FFP? And then the three assay combinations, XTEM to FibTem, really your go-to for every patient that's bleeding. XTEM to APTEM if you really wanna put the nail in the coffin that it's hyperfibrinolysis. And InTem to HepTem to rule out heparin. And then we have the, you guys will have the tools, the pocket guide, and the algorithms for some of those clinical situations. So going into some clinical examples. So here we have a motor vehicle accident, exploratory laparotomy. So they ordered their massive transfusion protocol, and then also a Rotem after just 3 units of red blood cells. And this is a printout as opposed to the live view, so it's a little bit different layout. But what do you guys see right off the bat, shape-wise? Well, yes, fish. So we have XTEM with the fish, FibTem with the fish, and then the APTEM with the wine glass. So there's a lot of information going on, but really the takeaway from this is that there's a hyperfibrinolysis. So now here they are about a couple hours later. They've given Amicar, and like I said, they ordered their MTP, so they gave some MTP product. What are you guys seeing now? Bullet, wine glass. Bullet. So we know it's a weak clot, so we're gonna rule in, rule out fibrins. Which assay are we looking to do that? XTEM, FibTem, or APTEM? FibTem, yeah. So, or 22, or FibTem's 11. So based off of FibTem of 11, and then you're not abandoning your other lab tests, so you have a platelet count of 17. So between those two pieces of information, what can you confirm a need for platelets? Yeah. What's that?
More.
More platelets. So here we are after additional 2 platelets, and what do you guys see? Bullet, wine glass. Wine glass, right? XTEM, nice wine glass shape. You can see the A10 came up from 22 to 46, but the FibTem stayed at 11 because again, there's no platelet contribution to that count.
And the normal value is also printed on that.
Yes, yeah, you can see these are the normal.
And when you log in online, the normal values pop up there as well.
So that was the last in this series. So here we have a gunshot wound victim, 4 in the morning, and this is after 3 rounds of 1-to-1. They did give a cryo, obviously a good source of fibrinogen, a couple of platelets. What do you guys see? Fish, bullet, or wine glass? Bullet, right? So we know it's a weak clot. So which parameter are we looking at? at the FibTem, but are we gonna look at A10, CT, or ML? A10. So we're looking at our A10 and our FibTem, we see it's 2, so what would be maybe your takeaway from this Rotem, the need for fiber, yeah. And we also answers right there.
But you're also looking at CT, right?
To some degree, yeah, but you have to remember that if there's something to build a clot out of, you're gonna get an extension of your CT. So, and that's why in the algorithm thing, it's look at the need for fibrin, and then go back and look at that need for, additional FFP. So here, 4.5 hours later, they gave 3 more FFP, 3 more red blood cells, 3 more platelets, no more cryo. Better, worse? Worse. And you can see, and you set me up for this too, you can see the CT's extended, right? So finally, 2.5 hours later, it looks like they've exited their MTP, and given cryo and platelets, no more FFP, and it's still bullet shaped, but it's obviously significantly improved, right? And the CTs did come right back into line without the additional FFP. You have a question? No, okay. So the first 2 were massive transfusion situations, which is, I think, where everyone thinks of Rotem and viscoelastic testing. However, this is a patient in the ICU, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for use in Rotem and making that decision between a medical bleed and a surgical bleed. So here they're oozing, and they want to give 3 to 4 FFP before they take them back to surgery, so I say kind of hedging their bets about that. Then they run the Rotem. And you can, what do you guys see in the Rotem?
White glass.
Yeah, huge white glass, right? You think they needed FFP? No. So this was a situation where it's just purely a surgical bleed. And they were able to avoid those 3 to 4 FFP. And just discussing a little bit about cost, these 3 assays, like I said, probably cost less than $50 compared to 3 units of FFP and the additional risks that come with those. Also, the boxes outside are this color because they're outside the reference ranges. And this black line right here is that profile overlay I was talking about, that you can bring up. View what normal is. Here we have some videos. These are sped up 25 times the speed, so I wish it was this fast, unfortunately it's not. So we're 5 minutes, 6 minutes into the run. You can see we have the X-Tem to FibTem, so clearly they want to rule in raw fibrin. The X-Tem and the App-Tem, so maybe lysis is a concern.
The nice thing, the really nice thing that I like is that you can run multiple samples at a time. So let's say like you have a gunshot wound, right, and then you run a sample and then you give blood products and then you immediately can send off another sample and just see in real time how that changes after you give them.
Yes, you can.
But we only have 1 machine.
They can stop this at any time.
So if we send another sample, they'll say, scram this, put another.
Yeah.
What if there's 2 or 3 patients that are needing this?
Then I guess
Another
they'll go
machine.
and have to, they can
Somebody
buy
has to
another
decide-
machine,
somebody
or
has to
they'll have
decide.
to do a little triaging with the samples, a little communication back and forth with the providers to find out.
Can you run 2 different patients on 1 machine?
The device, there's no safeguards in place for running 2 patients on the device. If you guys do so, it's at your own risk, because we don't.
We don't run, I mean, the lab's gonna run, we just wanna tell them what to do, so
Yeah.
we can't tell them run 2 patients.
That's why I said I think that would be, I think it'd be a much easier conversation just to say, hey, can you check to see if that other patient, the decision's already been made, and you can stop that test and start a new one.
But who makes the decision
About,
when to stop the
I
test?
think you have to talk to, I guess, the other anesthesiologist that was kind of.
like I said, keep in mind most every Rotem you're running, once that A10, you get to that point of that A10, you're getting the bulk of the information, so. So in this particular instance, obviously we were talking, but, you can see, what do you guys see going on? Yeah. And about, I believe this one, about 12 or 13 minutes into the run, you can see the ML starts generating a percentage, so you would know it's an unstable clot. It does tend to show up just a little bit quicker in the fifth test.
So in that situation, you wanna give cryo or FFP?
Well, you would wanna take everything into consideration, but what this is telling you is that there's definitely an overactivity of plasmin. So however you guys decided to treat that, you know, whether it be, Amicar, TXA, those are indicated.
Be sure and educate the GYN oncologists. GYN oncologists, put them on your list.
I'm here all day today, so I'm not sure who she sent the invites out to. I'm always available to come back in and educate. I live in Arlington Heights, so. So it's nice.
So we have this already now?
Yeah.
Starting next week, and then it'll be rolled out next week.
And then we can go on our, how do we get it? Who do we tell if we wanna try to run the lab?
So you order it, right, so you order it in a care connection, and then you send the blue top to the lab. So the NCT will run it to the lab, and then you can access online and watch real time.
On your computer, you
Nothing's
just,
in the system yet.
Yeah, not that I'll be
Just in
doing.
case, just in case.
It's good though.
So I can foresee pharmacy using this as a way to prevent us from giving factor 7.
Right.
Which would be obviously a big cost savings. So which of these would tell us that we have a factor 7 problem?
So the most,
Clock time.
essentially in the clock time, but essentially you would go through and use Rotem to rule out all the other, you know, can I rule out the need for fibrin? Can I rule out the need for additional platelets? Can I rule out the need for FFP? It'd almost be like, okay, factor 7's now the last resort.
like, you would look at all of the, tracings, and then you would say component by component, okay, I don't need platelets, okay, I don't need fibrinogen, okay, I don't need, yeah.
So Rotem has a very high negative predictive value. It's constantly 0.95 and above. So,
So Angie, can you share whatever literature, we can stop recording, I guess.
Thank you so much.